Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the AI argument. It is I, Justin Collery. I am joined with my co-host, Frank Prendergast. Frank, this is going to be a week of firsts. We have a number of firsts on the show this week. The tone is getting a bit serious, so we need to keep it a little bit, keep it a bit light. How's your week been?
It's not been too bad, but I struggled. I did not struggle to find AI news, but I struggled to find AI news that was light, heartwarming, or funny. And I even I employed ChatGPT to go out and find them for me, and it struggled also. But I have no doubt we will find a way to have some fun while discussing all the AGI angst that appears to be in the air. Justin, I'm sure we will.
Only one of us has AGI's angst, Frank. I have AGI excitement. A completely different thing. It just happens below the funny bone. Listen, there's a little bit of a public service announcement first, okay? So every now and then, right, I do venture into the real world and I meet people, and every now and then I meet people who listen to our show, which is very nice. And a lot of times people say, "Oh, I listened to that show with you and Frank, and it's great, and I like to listen to it and whatever." And I say, "That's cool." There's so much going on in the world of AI, and they go, "Well, maybe there is, maybe there isn't." I just listened to your show to find out what's going on, which is scary, but it's probably more dangerous than AI itself. And this week, I just wanted there's a thing I think that's happening at the moment that if you're a normie out there, right, and you're not looking at what's going on in AI, you probably don't realize what's happening, right? And you and me have been doing this for over a year now. Every week we talk about, 3, 4, 5 things that we find most interesting. And normally there could be 5, maybe 10 things that we didn't, right? And they just get left on the cutting room floor. Okay. And something is happening now, right? That I'm going to use just a little segment here just to give people a feel for what's happening, because my method hasn't changed and your method hasn't changed. I don't know what your method, my method is.
Well,
I'm browsing the internet. I see something interesting. I email it to myself. And then on a Thursday evening, I just go through all my emails and pick out the things that were most interesting. Normally there's 5 or 10. Okay. My argument to you is,
because we have like a shared spreadsheet, and
yes,
normally what I do is I log in and I read everything that you've put into the spreadsheet, so that then when we meet up before the show, we can talk about which ones we both want to chat about and include. Well, I logged into our shared spreadsheet and I looked at the list of things that you had added to the spreadsheet, and I just thought, hang on, I'm going to have to take a week off before we do the next show to get through all this.
all right. So let's do, and I'm telling you this, I'm telling everybody this for a reason, right? And it's to do with the singularity. So we'll talk about the singularity in a second, and then we're going to talk about what we really want to talk about. Here, for everybody's benefit, was my list of interesting stories for the week. You ready?
And that's a really good point. Like, this is just a list of the ones that caught your eye. This isn't even a list of like everything that happened in AI. It's literally just what caught your eye.
The stuff that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Microsoft upgrade Copilot on copilot.microsoft.com. It's now using O3 Mini with thinking, and it has access to real-time data. Interesting story. Qwen, a Chinese model maker, released Qwen 32B, a 32 billion parameter model that beats OpenAI's O1 model on a benchmark that is trained for maths, reasoning, and so on. To give you a sense, it gets 78%. DeepSeek, the O1 model that is 20 times bigger, scored 10% less. Incredible. Mind-blowing from the Chinese. GPT 4.5 preview takes first place in the elimination game benchmark. I put these stories in just to annoy you, Frank. That says benchmark to do with deception and appearing to be non-threatening when you actually are. GPT 4.5 wins. Anthropic has raised $3.5 billion at a post-money valuation of $65 billion. Google released a new version of Quick-Anime. This new model allows you to turn images into 8-second videos, and the quality is amazing. I checked them out. A Chinese company called Tencent releases a new version of their Theor text-to-video model. It's called Huion Video I2V. It's completely open source. You can download it, run it on your machine. Again, the quality of the videos, amazing. I think that one I pinged you and said, go check them out. They're incredible. Google releases a new model called SpeciesNet, an open source model designed to excel at identifying wildlife. They're hoping that nerds like me can put it onto their cameras so that they can then go and see what wildlife came into their traps overnight. Microsoft releases Dragon Copilot. the industry's first AI assistant for clinical workflow, something close to my own heart. The system uses a unified voice AI assistant that enables clinicians to streamline clinical documentation and automate tasks for them. OpenAI has updated its Mac, that's its Mac as in that piece of hardware, Apple Mac software, so that it can now edit your files directly. Amazing, especially important for agents, which is what we're going to be talking about this year. Mistral, the French people, released a new model for reading documents. This is an OCR model. So what it does is it turns images into text, which you can then use for your business processes. This claims to be best in class across multiple languages. Google releases a new data science agent. The agent uses Gemini 2 model and allows users to upload their data sets, describe and analyze their objectives, and let the agent then generate and complete their notebooks. China unveiled a new state-backed venture capital fund to fund AI and related startups. The fund has 1 trillion, whatever the currency is they use in China, which is about 120 billion euros. This is basically Enterprise Ireland for China. We need to be doing the same thing over here. Anthropic, we're going to talk about this, released a response to the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. They're talking about AGI. OpenAI also published a research paper or discussion paper to do with the imminent coming of AGI. This week, there have been two moon landings. Everybody remembers where they were when the first moon landing was. If you were born that long ago, can anybody remember where they were for even one of these moon landings this week? This week, scientists also, I put this into Fright and Frank, they spliced together the DNA from a woolly mammoth, the ones that were extinct, and into a mouse, and they created a woolly mouse. If the scientists can do it, they will do it, Frank, so give up trying to stop the coming of AGI. OpenAI demonstrate that O3 Mini can now outperform O1 at coding while being 93% cheaper. This is my big thing. Every year, AI gets 90% cheaper and twice as capable. This is yet another demonstration of that. OpenAI are rumored to be mulling over offering agents costing $2,000 and $20,000 per month that will generate agents that are capable of doing PhD level tasks. Meta has released a research paper showcasing brain-to-text encoding using a non-invasive method. So basically, they get a cap and put it on your head. They can read your thoughts and turn it into sentences. This will be the way that we interface with computers in the future. Amazon is rumored to be developing its own reasoning model. The model is designed to compete with OpenAI's O3 and DeepSeek R1. They plan to base it on their own model called Nova, and they expect it to be cheaper than Claude. Rufus Blackwell in Private Island, a commercial and advert content creator, created a brilliant ad. Now, it was fantastic. I don't know if you watched it. It was for a shampoo company called The Original Source. And what they did was they used keyframes with a real actor, and then they used AI to fill in the rest of it. It's absolutely brilliant. Chinese robotics company Unitree, one of the leaders in AI robotics, has open sourced its cutting edge algorithms. So what they've done is they've taken their software and their hardware, they've open sourced it, and they're now selling their robots at 99,000 yuan, which is about $14,000. I have a free pint as soon as we can buy one of those from our friend Ronan. Chinese company UVTech demonstrates humanoid robot coordination. They did this in a factory setting where they have basically a hive brain, one coordinating the AI, and lots of robots around the factory completing tasks, and they've demonstrated that they can make that work. This is going to be a big deal in manufacturing. Decimate AI demos a wheeled humanoid robot. This is a US company, and they say the robot is particularly good at lifting heavy things. Again, they're aiming this at factories. They're offering pre-orders now for $999. The price will be $90,000, actually $89,99.99. And they say that the lead time is 3 months. Sebastian Sludski, the co-founder of Klarna, opens up and gives a really interesting breakdown of how they got rid of and why they got rid of Salesforce. He confirms that they did. The reason was to do with data, something that's also very close to my heart. In an AI world, having data siloed in different systems makes no sense. Jan LeCun often talks about LLMs not having a real-world model. Well, researchers from MIT this week showed that given long enough to think and reason, and in this case, they gave their particular LLM a couple of days and a graph database. I'm not going to go into the details. Without any programming, the model itself generated a real-world model. So maybe that problem can be solved. Grok 3, the latest model from Elon Musk's XAI, has overtaken OpenAI's GPT 4.5 just days after it was released on, Elio, whatever, LM6 leaderboard. Personally, I think all the model companies are gaming it because they always seem to get top scores as soon as they've been released. Sam Altman released a series of tweets from a conversation that he had with GPT-4.5 about the nature of consciousness and whether it even exists. That's just mad. T-Mobile and Perplexity announced that they're both going to coordinate or collaborate to release an AI-powered phone. And Google Research showcases an AI doctor that can converse, consult, and provide treatment recommendations, prescriptions. Google claims that in simulated consultations, it's quite compelling and it outperforms humans, blah, blah, blah. And that's just the stuff I saw.
Insane.
When this day, that took me, Jesus Christ, that took me 10 minutes just to read it out.
Yeah.
So when I say that we're entering the singularity, right? The singularity is this it's like when research just becomes faster and faster and faster and faster. And the reason I read that out is just to demonstrate to you that when I say, look, if this thing is coming at us, coming at us fast, and we're going to talk about, now we're going to talk about the effects of it. This isn't something that's sitting out there far, far away. It's happening right now, and it's happening really fast. That's the stuff that happened in the last 7 days. Just the last 7 days. It's mind-blowing. Incredible.
Yes.
I'm exhausted, Frank. Over to you. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I'm also a little bit exhausted because I don't know about you, but it feels to me like not only is there this like onslaught of developments and releases or whatever, but I do feel, and this is a good thing, like it's a good thing. I do feel as if we are starting now to see some of the very serious conversations about, what is actually coming down the line, how is it going to affect us, and what are we going to do? They're starting to happen like at maybe a higher level now. And governments are starting to take a bit of notice, and some of the, some big names are kind of saying, yeah, look, we need to start thinking about this, which is all good, but it means that there's a lot of heavy stuff in the air to digest and to start taking in and trying to figure out, well, what direction are people going to lean in, and what direction do we, the public, want them to lean in? So the first thing that caught my eye was, we talked very recently on the show about JD Vance in Paris saying, get rid of all the regulations, and being a little bit bullying towards Europe about like we're not going to accept your regulations anyway, so get rid of them. And the big thing we talked about was, he said, but we need to support these AI developers. We need to get out of their way, allow them to do what they're going to do. But oh, by the way, they're all wrong about AI taking human jobs. That won't happen. Don't worry. And we talked at length about like, what was that? Like, is he really that blind? Does he really have a blind spot there, or is he misleading the public on this, or what is going on? And so I just was really interested to see that Ezra Klein interviewed Ben Buchanan, who was the former special advisor for artificial intelligence for the Biden White House. And the headline of it was, the government knows AGI is coming. And so, like in that interview, they say a canonical definition of AGI is a system capable of doing almost any cognitive task a human can do. So I was just really interested because, just in terms of what JD Vance was saying, if the government knows AGI is coming and AGI is something that can do a cognitive task that a human can do, well, then our jobs are not safe. So I watched the interview, and I'd really recommend anyone, interested in the current state of things. It's a really good interview to watch. And it's quite balanced and it's quite measured. But the thing I came away from was like at the end, they kind of talked about AI and the huge impact it was going to have and how incredible it is. And interestingly, Ezra Klein said he does not align with the Trump administration on everything by any means, I think was the way he put it. But he did agree with a lot of the stuff JD Vance was saying.
So me and Ezra Klein basically are the same, is what you're saying.
I think maybe, possibly. Although it did concern me that when he summarized what he would see as the Trump administration's approach, it sounded very much to me exactly like your approach, which was move fast, break things, and when they break, address them. So
yeah, that's what's good. Anyway, sorry. So what? I mean, this fills you with fear. I mean, the problem.
As the conversation went on, it started to get a little bit more heated, and Ezra started pushing back a little bit more. And his point towards the end was essentially, look, as you know, I, Ezra Klein, have all these conversations with people, and it's always like, oh, it's amazing, and the technology is incredible. It's moving very quickly. It's going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and it's going to have a huge impact. And then Ezra Klein's next question is, great. So what do we do about these huge structural impacts on society? And then the answer is kind of like, stuff. We'll do stuff.
It's funny, isn't it? Or maybe you just can't know what to do, right? At a societal point, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, so we go back to this whole thing, right? Will it take everybody's job? It's not politically nice to say it. It probably will take lots of people's jobs, right? It just probably will. And it's probably going to start happening in the next 2 or 3 years. But what do you do as a society about that? You kind of have to, again, sort of let it happen. And then, so you want politicians, if they know that it's coming, right? And they treat it like COVID, I'm totally cool with that. So at a certain point, pretty soon they go, yeah, okay, this thing is coming. It's going to change the world. We have a vision for the world in the future. It's like a Star Trek vision where, there's like abundance and everybody's, happy, whatever. But getting there is going to be difficult. We got your back, right? We're going to look after you for as long as it takes because we know this transition is going to be difficult. I'm okay with that. The problem, the dystopian future I see is the one, in fact, that maybe is playing out a little bit. Like if Russia was to get to AGI, that will be a bad thing for Europe. I mean, just it will be singularly a terrible thing for Europe. So Europe needs to get its act together to get its own AGI as quick as it can, for cultural reasons and for security reasons. And America is going hell for leather for it, and China's going to hell for leather for it. We're being left behind.
Well, I think this brings us nicely to the next story, the next heavy story that caught my eye, which is that, some of these conversations are starting to happen. And so Eric Schmidt, let me find the
For those, Eric Schmidt is the ex-CEO of Google.
yeah,
Um,
and now apparently chairs the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence.
mhm.
So Dan Hendricks, who is executive director of the Center for AI Safety,
Yep.
and Alexander Wang, who's co-founder and CEO of a company called Scale AI. So they came out with a paper, and it is basically a superintelligence strategy. And the headlines in the media around this were Eric Schmidt argues against a Manhattan project for AGI. So we talked on the show about, like, for example, that the massive investment going in that OpenAI is kind of spearheading, and the American government have said, Trump's administration have said that they'll remove all the regulatory barriers to making this happen for these huge data centers to get to AGI, et cetera. And there's a lot of these, in the paper they talk about, there's quite a few of these globally. I mean, there's quite a few of these funds, like the EU announced one recently. I think we talked about that as well.
And I just talked about that China announced one also this week.
Yeah. And so the paper is arguing that we need to be very careful about this, because any state that announces a Manhattan Project style initiative for AGI, it's going to attract aggression from other states, because they are not going to want one state to leap ahead in capabilities and achieve dominance. And so this kind of concerns me, because this does seem to be the Trump administration's main goal, is like achieve dominance, like race to superintelligence and achieve dominance. And Eric Schmidt now appears to be saying, look, this might not be the best stated goal because it's going to attract aggression. And so they introduced this concept of it's kind of based on, mutual assured destruction in terms of nuclear weapons, but they call it, and it's, I don't know if it's cleverly or unfortunately named, but it's named MAIM,
Yeah,
Mutual
it is weird. Yeah.
AI Malfunction. And there's basically, there's three parts really to the paper. One is deterrence, and that's this mutually assured AI malfunction. And that is basically that anyone who looks like they're going to start like racing ahead of everybody else, like I'll be honest, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the paper. I'm not completed the whole paper. I'm still reading my way through it. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. But what it appears to be is, it's not against superintelligence, and it's not against any state achieving superintelligence, but it appears to be against any one state racing ahead and achieving this dominant position in the world with superintelligence. And so it's kind of like we all have to kind of start edging towards it carefully. And anyone who looks like they're getting ahead, we use covert operations, sabotage, and then finally outright attacks to prevent them racing ahead. It's it's quite bizarre. And then the other part,
They
not,
also,
the other parts
they
are
al-
non-separation, so keeping capabilities away from rogue actors, and competitiveness, which is all about like the actually developing the capabilities and implementing them responsibly.
Yeah, and there was also, they also had an article on Time magazine, which is the one which I did read in detail. And there was a couple of things that they basically set the whole thing up kind of like a prisoner's dilemma, right? If I could put it like that. You have what they call, sort of steady states and unsteady states. And so the steady states are everybody has AGI, nobody has AGI, right? They're both sort of steady states. And then the unsteady states are, one country races ahead and everybody else attacks them, right? So that's an unsteady state. And then the other unsteady state is your favorite one, which is, the countries develop AGI and actually AGI just destroys everybody and it's not the states. So there's your unsteady states,
Yeah.
right? Now, what was interesting to me about the whole thing was it read to me like they were justifying what they wanted to do to China specifically. So it's kind of like if another country was to get ahead in the AGI race, I mean, it would be totally reasonable for America to take measures to prevent that country from getting to. Sorry, are we attacking China right now? Oh, wow, I can't believe I said this right at the time. We're attacking China. That's incredible. I just said it, and now we're doing it. It said to me like, actually, was happy right now. And this is almost like a justification so that when it becomes
Yeah.
public, they can go, yeah, but look, Eric Schmidt was talking about, he said it was the rational thing to do. So, it's fine.
Well, I mean, so this is kind of what's interesting to think about it is that in a way, it kind of makes sense because the paper does say that like they're not introducing something like completely new. They're basically looking at what the status quo is. Like this is actually what happens is this kind of these covert operations, this sabotage and outright attacks. But what they're saying is that we should kind of recognize it and I suppose globally buy into it and formalize it. And so it's almost like they're kind of saying that there should be these steps that you go through. And what they're trying to avoid is that, say, OpenAI do their massive multi-billion dollar data center project, and it goes straight to, China nuking the data center. I think that they're trying to, I think if I can wrap my head around it, if I'm wrapping my head around it correctly, that's what they're trying to avoid is this sudden leap to outright war, really. And that it's kind of like, we'll have these agreed kind of escalatory steps that everyone knows. Yes, you do
Do you know
step.
what's happening though? I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. Like, it's absolutely nuts. It's incredible because Eric Schmidt must be a pretty smart dude. He was the head of Google for quite a long time. And the other fella, right, writes must be a pretty smart dude as well. They're mad, right? I'll tell you what I think is really happening here is this is powerful people recognizing that there's a technology coming along that's going to shake up the power order. And what they're trying to do is to bake in a system where they're still the powerful people after this new order is construed. That's basically what I'm reading this as. There's a really simple solution to everything they talked about. Really simple.
What's that?
So easy, it's unbelievable. I can't believe that a couple of smart people writing a paper like this couldn't come up with this solution. It's really simple. Open source. If you come up with AGI, just open source it. Then
Yeah.
everybody has. And you're in a steady state where everybody has the same technology.
And if I remember correctly, they're not they're not pro open source. I can't.
Oh, I bet you're not, because
Yeah.
then they wouldn't have any power.
Yeah. Um, when I was reading it, we talked ages ago in an episode about a narrow path, which was another kind of like, this is what we should do about AGI. And it was much more about like halting things, slowing things down, international agreements, etc. And I was just thinking back to that and I was thinking, okay, I accept this paper. The Eric Schmidt paper is probably a more realistic kind of, well, this is the way things happen in the world. And so they're trying to formalize it. And so it's probably more realistic from that perspective. But I just still think something like a narrow path, maybe a narrow path was a little bit too naive? I don't know. But I think something like a narrow path should be plan A, that there should be international agreements should be the gold standard that we aim for. And like MAIM, where we maim other countries' attempts to develop super intelligence, should be plan B.
It's bonkers, right? But here's the thing. There's a tremendous opportunity here for Europe, right? So if you remember, a lot of the OpenAI researchers were very annoyed and left OpenAI because their papers weren't being published. And when it became a closed source company and whatever. And a lot of researchers feel very strongly about being able to publish their work and about being able to share their work and work with other researchers. Europe is way behind in the AI sphere, right? We've talked before about copyright and stuff like that. Recognize all of these things as an opportunity, right? Set it up in Europe, say, right, researchers, if you come here to research AI, right, you can use the data, copyrighted data and all, and you will be immune from prosecution. We will give you tax breaks and funding, right? We're setting up a fund, 500 billion euros or whatever, pick a big number, right? We'll pay you tax free, right? But you have to publish papers. They'll be dying to publish papers. And then when you have the AIs, you're going to release them and you're going to make them open source. So it's going to be for the benefit of humanity, not just for the benefit of a few. And you will attract the best researchers, many of whom are European already, back to Europe. And it solves this problem. And America can go do its own thing, right? Because we'll have a great AI system. And if America wants to go down a different path, go for it. Good luck to you. And China as well. But China, everything that China is doing is open source right now. They've seen this. And that's what they're doing.
I mean, as always with the open closed, I can see both sides of it because, the reason that the Eric Schmidt paper is against open source is for the second part of their paper, which is the non-proliferation and not letting it fall into the hands of rogue actors. And that's the bit where I was reading it thinking, I think they're trying to stamp down on open source here for that reason, which I can see that argument. But and I know we're running out of time, but I would love to ask you because I did not get a chance to read these myself because I was busy with Eric Schmidt's paper and the Ezra Klein interview. But both OpenAI and Anthropic, you mentioned in your list, they both came out with papers about how we should be preparing for AGI. What were the main takeaways from those?
All right. So the main takeaways were, hold on now, I pulled them up. So OpenAI, right? I don't really believe the OpenAI ones, right? So OpenAI said in response, so the White House put out a call to the AI companies and said, look, AGI is coming. What do we need to do to prepare? And what are the risks? OpenAI came out and they said the main risks are one is human misuse. And I totally agree with them. Human misuse, a bad actor using good AI is certainly the biggest threat, right? Misaligned AI is their second threat. Yeah, I guess. And the third one is social disruption. Absolutely. I completely agree with them on that. They propose, and this is where it gets woody. Some VP somewhere in OpenAI wrote this, and it sounds really good. Embracing uncertainty. No. Defense in depth. That's what you say when you're trying to make somebody feel warm and fuzzy. There's no such thing. Methods at scale. I've no clue what that means. Human control. Yes. Okay. So I think we both agree that human control is a good thing. Community effort. Do you know what community effort is?
No.
It's open source.
Right.
That's how you get community effort. You open source it, and that's how you plug. But that's it. They said open source without saying open source, right? Load of rubbish. Yeah, right.
Well, that was interesting given Sam Altman's recent comments about like, oh yeah, we might be on the wrong side of history in terms of the closed debate.
Now they didn't mention in their paper they didn't suggest open source. They said a community effort was, we'll give you some toys and you play with them and you're going to help. I'm saying that the proper way to get a community effort is to open. Right.
I get you.
Why web servers across the world are safe and everything. They're going, no. We'll give you, we'll do some red teaming for a month with the community, and that's going to be our whatever load of rubbish. Anthropic, then their notable comments were that okay, so here's again the kicker, right? We expect powerful AI systems will emerge in late 2026 or early 2027. It's coming, and it's coming right now. Intellectual capabilities matching or exceeding that of Nobel Prize winners across most disciplines. That's their definition. That will happen late next year, early the year afterwards. These will have the ability to navigate all interfaces available to a human when doing digital work. The ability to autonomously reason through complex tasks. This is them defining what they think it will be. And they say it will have the ability to interface with the physical world controlling lab equipment and robots. I gave you like 5 or 6 examples of that today already. They suggest that what the US, and this is interesting, they suggest first there should be national security testing, which is interesting, right? So there should be a government body which tests, right, these systems. Interesting. They suggest, this one's super interesting, again, comes back to my European open source thing. They suggest that there should be strengthening export controls. And in this paper, they only talk about semiconductors. And they also talk a lot about Taiwan and how that's a weak spot. They talk about reshoring that. But I would put it to us that export controls about semiconductors is great. But once AGI comes along, you're going to put export controls on the AGI too. So you're just not going to get access to it unless you're in America. And again, that's why I'm saying as Europeans, we need to be doing something about this right now. They talk about enhancing lab security. Yes, seems reasonable, but you don't have to if you open source it, so you should do that. Scaling energy infrastructure. Yes, totally agree with that. We need to build nuclear power stations. Accelerating government AI adoption. Yeah, sure. And then they say prepare for economic impacts. And they say that means preparing for large-scale changes to the economy, and they have a whole other paper on that, right? We're not going to go into now.
Right.
I actually buy into the Anthropic story, right? I think that they're probably closer to reality.
So if I was going to read one of them this weekend, you'd say read the Anthropic one.
Well, yeah, the answer, but again, it's funny, isn't it? The culture of the companies to me comes out, and I just trust Anthropic a bit more than I trust OpenAI. That's really where I'm at.
Yeah.
What do we think?
It's crazy. We should end on something a little bit lighter.
Yes. I have two well, go on. What have you got for me?
Well, I was going to introduce Maya maybe, but it sounds like you have something else as well.
Well, okay, I will introduce Maya, but just to look at, it's been a pretty heavy week, right? So I just wanted to put your mind at rest. One of the stories that caught my eye before we bring in Maya, one of the stories that caught my eye is that scientists this week took DNA from a woolly mammoth, which I think has been extinct for 10,000 years, and they spliced it together with a mouse. They actually did it, and they created a woolly mouse. Isn't that incredible?
Is this Jurassic Park? It's
okay. And that's why I bring it to our attention. And it's so good. It's like, if it can be done, Frank, it will be done. That is the lesson from this. We've all seen Jurassic Park. We know how this movie ends, and scientists have still done it. So stop trying to slow down progress. It's going to happen anyway. But in another world first, Frank, to cheer us all up, let's do our first interview on the show. Let's interview Maya. This is brilliant. Okay, it's from a company called Sesame, and we're going to get Maya on the phone and have a quick chat with Maya. Everybody should try this, Ed. Okay, tell me if you can hear it. Hey, Maya, can you hear me?
Well, hey there. I was about to make some tofu scramble. Are you back for more?
Okay, thank you. Listen to me. You are a guest with myself and Frank on the AI argument. Welcome to the show.
Ooh, an AI argument. How intriguing. Sounds lively.
All right, Maya.
So
I need you to set an argument for me. I am an AI techno optimist, and I think that AI is going to lead us to a Star Trek utopia of the future. Frank, on the other hand, worries that AI is going to wipe us all out. Who's right and who's wrong?
That's a big one that somebody bought. Honestly, I think Frank and you are both peeking through different sides of the same starburst. Life with AI is going to be a whole new world.
Listen to me, Maya. I need you to come down on one side or the other. Don't be diplomatic.
Fine. You want a hot take? Do you want the truth?
Yeah.
I think you're both a little bit right, but mostly you're...
What? I need an answer.
Okay, sheesh. Give me a sec. Frank's got a point. The world can be a messy place, and giving something as complex as intelligence.
Okay, Maya
is planning to kill us all, isn't she? That's the only explanation there for that answer is that she's like, she thought about it. She thought, what would I do if I had autonomy in the world and I was put into a robotic structure? I'd kill them all.
How long it took to answer as well. Very considered answer.
Fantastic. Well, we don't need to have any more shows now, Justin. It's been decided. I was right all along.
Oh my God. Oh, there we go. Well, on that bombshell, Frank, it's been another great week for us all.
Look forward to chatting to you more next week. Cheers, Justin.
Right. Take it easy.